Hey everyone, my name is Shay Parker and this is RTFM, the show where I teach you how to play a game, because there's too many things on Kickstarter and y'all gotta make an informed decision. And today, I'm teaching a game called Battle Bears, which you may be familiar with if you've played any of the many Battle Bears mobile games that have come out over the last 10 years. What we're looking at today is an arena-style game where each player is part of an elite squad of Ursine commandos, and your team has crash-landed in the middle of the Huggable Forest. Okay, that may not sound too scary, but that's because you haven't seen the Huggables, a never-ending swarm of pink cotton whose only desire is to hug you. Okay, look, this game is very cute. It's adorable, really. Y'all are a bunch of cartoon bears with ridiculous weapons, and the zombie threat is an army of teddy bears, but that doesn't mean that everyone's gonna get along. You only have enough supplies for one bear to escape, so if you want to beat that one bear, you gotta take everyone else out first. Of course, if you get knocked out, that doesn't mean you're out of the game. Defeated bears come back as Huggables, after which your priorities change a bit, they get a little more hug-centric, but it is still possible to win. Now, we're about ready to get started, but before we do, I need to tell you two things. First off, the materials I'm using are a prototype, and based on how well the Kickstarter goes, the finished product is going to look a fair bit different. And second, the makers of Battle Bears have paid for me to make this video. However, this is not a review, I'm simply teaching you how to play the game, so you don't need to worry about any bias. That being said, let's learn how to play Battle Bears. The Huggable Forest is a chaotic place, so the first thing you'll do is build the map by randomly placing these tiles in a big triangle like so. Then shuffle the gas cards and place them nearby. These are items that you'll be drawing throughout the game. Next, everyone chooses their bear and grabs the appropriate character token and player board. Again, this token will be upgraded once the Kickstarter is complete. You'll notice that each character shows three unique things. First is a basic attack on the left, and while this looks different for each character, the stats are all the same. The second is the weight track, which has a different progression for each character. And third is each bear's special ability. These are different, but I'll get into how they work a little later. After you get your character, you'll place a health token at 10 on the health track and a heavy token at 0 on the weight track. Then choose a first player, and in clockwise order, place your bear on any grassland space along the edge of the board. Once this is done, you're ready to start playing. Okay, you're all set up and you're ready to start blasting bears with bazookas, so let's get into it. On your turn, you will perform two actions. They can be the same or different. And then you'll add Huggables to the board and pass your turn to the left. The actions you can do are move, attack, use an item, and reload/rearrange. Moving is fairly simple. You have a speed which changes based on how many items you have equipped, and since you start with nothing, you have full speed on the first round. So Oliver here can move 5 spaces. You can move through other players, but you can't end your move in the same space. You also can't move through cliffs or lava, and moving through a forest counts as 2 points of movement. Let's end our move here on this gas can. Whenever you end your movement on a gas can, you get to draw 2 cards. If any of them are equipment cards that match open spaces on your player board, you can immediately place them on the appropriate slot. Check the weight of the items and move your heavy tracker to match. As you can see, this reduces our speed for the next time we move. Also important to note is that a gas can space can only be used once per turn. Now, I'm going to skip over attacks for a second and go right to using items or abilities. Many cards you draw will be one-time use items. You can take an action to discard the item and gain its effect. This Pop-Tart Shuriken, for example, will help keep us safe from enemy attacks. Now, instead of using an item, you might want to use your bear's special ability. The number within the gas can icon shows how many cards you'll have to discard from your hand in order to use the ability. Then perform the action or gain the bonus described. Our Plasma Blast here shows a lot of symbols, and you're going to see these on a lot of the items as well, so let's go over what they mean. Let's say we're a few rounds in and we've fully kitted out Oliver here. Some of the items have other characters' faces on them, but for a regular game you don't need to worry about that. Let's start with our light weapon, these fireworks. If we want to use these, we'll take an attack action. Check the range, which in this case is 4, so we can target a character up to 4 spaces away, and deal 2 damage to them. This green symbol is splash damage, meaning that each character adjacent to the target will also take 1 damage. After we've made our attack, we flip the card over and we'll need to reload it before we can use it again. Some attacks are a little different though, like our basic attack. Instead of a range, this shows a melee symbol, which means you can only target adjacent enemies. And because of this symbol, we don't have to exhaust the card like we did with the fireworks, which is good because this is printed on the board, and in order to flip it over, I'd have to do something that I'm pretty sure the publishers would be unhappy about. Anyway, the last symbol on our basic attack is quick, which means that we can perform this attack for free after taking a move action. Lastly, there's our flamethrower, which will deal 5 damage to an adjacent enemy, 4 to an enemy 2 spaces away, and 3 if they're 3 spaces away. after which it doesn't have any effect. Now, we've taken some damage, so we might also want to use an item to get back some health. This mouthful of cheese seems to do the trick, as it will move our health tracker up by 4. Our armor will also help us avoid damage. If we exhaust it, we can ignore up to 2 damage from a hit. And if we want to avoid getting hit at all, it's best to hide in the trees. Any character in a forest space is hard to hit. When a character is hard to hit, any attack that targets them has to roll the die first. On a hit or crit symbol, the attack deals damage as normal, but on a miss, the attack deals no damage. The die will also be used for certain items to potentially deal more damage, but mostly it's used for hard to hit targets. The one exception to being hard to hit is splash damage. If you get hit by splash damage, it doesn't matter how well you've encased yourself in wood, you're going to get hit. Lastly, we need to talk about line of sight. Whenever you target something, you need to be able to see it. Draw a line from the center of your space to the center of your target. If it passes through a cliff, you can't see it. However, if it's sliding up along the edge of a cliff space like this, then that's fine. Also, if you're on a ziggurat, you can see over cliffs and you have a +1 to your range. Of course, it also means that other players can see you over the cliffs, so be careful. Now, the last action you can perform is reload and rearrange. When you take this action, you can pick up any cards on your board and replace them with any others, so long as they're of the correct type. And any exhausted cards can be flipped back to the ready side as you have reloaded them. And now, after you've taken your 2 actions, a couple things happen. First, discard down to 5 cards. Then, you need to advance the swarm by placing a Huggable token. Huggables must be placed on either an edge space or adjacent to another Huggable, and if you ever make it so that no player could possibly access a map tile without walking through a Huggable, you remove the tile from the game. Next up, we'll talk about how Huggables work and how to win the game in general. At the beginning of the game, Huggables are a little more than a roadblock, but as the game progresses, they become a much bigger threat. First off, if you ever move into a Huggable space, your action immediately ends, the Huggable is removed, you take 3 damage, and you don't get to draw gas cards. You can attack Huggables, but there are a few things to keep in mind. Huggables are always hard to hit, and you can't ignore that trait with abilities. However, they are still vulnerable to splash damage and only have 1 hit point, so that's helpful. Also, if you're adjacent to a Huggable when you attack it and the attack misses, they're going to hug you. Remove the token and take 3 damage. And the last quick thing is that if you end your turn completely surrounded by Huggables, you take 3 damage from, and I quote, excessive hugging. No means no, folks. So, Huggables are clearly a menace, but the main enemies are the other players. And as a bear, winning the game is dead simple. Be the last bear standing. What complicates matters is that whenever a player dies, they get to come back as a Huggable. When this happens, flip your board to the Huggable side, discarding all the cards in your hand and on your player board. Place a health token at 3, and at the beginning of your next turn, place your new Huggable character token on the board anywhere you could place a Huggable. And now that you are a pretty pink plush toy, your actions will play out a little differently. You don't have items anymore, so all you can do is move and attack. You have 3 movement points, but you can now move through Huggables as if they were empty spaces, and through cliffs and lava as if they were forests. Your attacks are a bit more limited. As you can see, there's Hug, which is a basic melee attack, but there's also Explode, which deals 3 but will end with you removing your character from the board. And if this is the bear that did you in, it's a Vendetta, and you deal 5 damage instead. Also, if you ever move into a non-Huggable space, you instantly trigger an Explode attack. But the thing to keep in mind is that after you kill yourself as a Huggable, you won't get reborn as a new Huggable this time. It's not the end of the game, though. At the end of your turn, whether your Huggable is still alive or not, you now get to place 2 Huggable tokens per round. And the Huggables can win the game if any one of the following conditions is met. If you run out of Huggable tokens to place, if you have no more legal space to place Huggables, or if the last remaining bears are eliminated at the same time. And that's how you play the base game of Battle Bears, but there's also a few alternative game modes that'll keep things fresh. So there are 3 additional game modes, and they can be every player for themselves or played as a team. I'll talk about the team mode at the end. First off, we have free-for-all. This is pretty much the same game, but instead of hoping to draw good weapons from the deck, every player starts with their character's personalized loadout. Then remove all equipment cards from the deck, leaving only the single-use items, and start playing. The second mode is Deathmatch, which is like a timed point battle. You choose to play 5 or 10 rounds, the first player using Huggable tokens to keep track. Set up as normal or using the free-for-all item rules, however you want. The big difference here is that there are no Huggables. And when you die, instead of becoming a Huggable, you respawn at any grassland space at the beginning of your next turn. The player that killed you gets one of these skull and crossbones tokens, and whenever you've finished 5 or 10 full rounds, whoever has collected the most tokens and thus made the most kills wins. And the last mode is King of the Windmill. This uses the free-for-all item setup, then place a Huggable token at the center of the map. If you end your movement on the Huggable, you pick it up and then you just need to stay alive. Choose a 10 or 15 point match at the beginning of the game, and you'll score points by either holding the Huggable at the end of your turn, earning 2 points, or eliminating the player holding the Huggable, earning 1 point. If you die while holding the Huggable, drop the token on your space and respawn like in Deathmatch. Also, like in Deathmatch, don't spawn any Huggables throughout the game. The only one in town is the one you want to grab. As soon as someone has reached the victory point total you chose, that player wins the game. And like I said, these can be played in team mode if you have an even number of players. Teams win by combining their points or if all of the teams are eliminated, depending on the game mode. The big change is that everyone gets an aid card as a team ability. This can be used like player abilities. They cost 1 card to use and can heal teammates. You'll notice it says you can revive a character. This is because when you die in a team battle, you don't become a Huggable until the end of your next turn. So your teammate has a chance to heal you, but if they can't, you don't get to begin your campaign of Cuddly Chaos until the following round. You can also use any healing items on adjacent teammates, and if you end your turn next to a teammate, you can trade items with them. And that's how you play Battle Bears. Thank you again to Games, I think that's how you pronounce it, for sponsoring this video. If this game looks like something you're interested in, check out the Kickstarter going on right now. Links in the description below. Bye!